I work with the Office of Multicultural Affairs as a pseudo staff member, helping out with programming and student organizations. I am also a part of one of those student organizations. I am the communications coordinator for the Black Student Union, and I'm also a um, MFA candidate in the office in the oh my goodness, words are hard today, in the Department of Theater Arts. And I am working towards directing and theater history. Shout out to my major professor who is here with us. Um, this is the first event in our um, Black History Month series, Black History Month celebration. This is the lunchtime lectures. They will be all month long on Tuesdays from 11:30 to 1. And the upcoming events put on by Black Student Union, the Black Student Union and the Office of Multicultural Affairs on Friday, Saturday, February 13th, we will have set up a library exhibit on Black History Month and also our theme for Black History Month this year, the future of Black history. And also on February 18th, we will have our keynote speaker, Ziona Bryant, and she will speak on where do we go from here, follow and listen to young Black organizers. And I will drop that link in the chat for you so that if you would like, you may register. It is www.uidaho.edu/BHM Bryant. All right. This is also a wonderful celebration of the 50th anniversary of Black Student Union here at the University of Idaho's campus, and I'm really, really excited to celebrate and hang out with all of you today and talk about some cool stuff. So without further ado, our modern Harlem Renaissance. So I fell in love with the Harlem Renaissance at a really young age. I remember like in eighth grade, I read some Zora Neale Hurston and some Langston Hughes, and I was like, this is it. I love it. I went on to, in college, I went on to sing Mother to Son by Langston Hughes uh, in front of the composer of that piece. And I joined the same sorority that Zora Neale Hurston was a part of. So I have a really, really fun connection with the Harlem Renaissance. But what was the Harlem Renaissance? It was an era that is ranked as one of the most significant and pivotal eras in American history. It spanned several years from the mid 1910s to 1935, where it had a hard stop. So the Harlem Renaissance was this rich time of Black excellence in the arts. The level of creativity in this period has inspired countless artists for generations. Now that we are back into the 20s, creativity within the Black arts community is even more evident and prominent due to intensifying riots and the rise of a global pandemic. So, what can we hope for our modern renaissance of Black artistic excellence, and how may it drive us into a more rich and colorful future? Today, we will explore the beginnings as well as the end of the Harlem Renaissance. We'll highlight Black excellence from this time period, compare that time to our own, and visualize where we are headed. So, the Harlem or Negro Renaissance, as it was also called. Rich era. There is this weird misconception that it was just about artistic expression, but it was actually a cultural upheaval where there was a celebration of the Black identity and what it meant to be Black in America. Some scholars on the timing think that it was just the 1920s, and some believe that it was the end of World War I or the start of the end to the start of the Great Depression. But as I said before, we're going to focus on mid 1910s to 1935. What brought this along? Well, disillusionment. Here we are, Black America, post slavery, a little bit post Reconstruction, Jim Crow South. There are these imposed Black codes that are legislation that strip Black citizens of their rights in the South. They're exploited and they're desperate surrounding those Jim Crow laws that are systemized segregation and discrimination against the African American and the Black citizen. Black Americans at this time were afraid and looking for something new, something safe, something good, somewhere that they can excel, somewhere that they don't have to live in poverty and live with injustice, but look toward the prospect of happiness and a better future. So, at the end of World War I in 1919, all the soldiers came back. These African American soldiers they were patriots. They fought for this country in hopes that if we show how dedicated we are to this country, they will accept us. But that did not happen. Racial tension exploded so bad. And that summer in 1919 was known as the Red Summer. Race riots took place all over the North and South, with Chicago and DC and other cities experiencing the deaths of men, women, and children. What was so strange about this experience is, in connection to other race riots of the past, this is the one that actually had casualties. And the reason there were casualties is because finally, African Americans dared to fight back, leading to a beautiful spirit of protest and a desire to be more than what they are seen as. So Black leaders like W.E.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington became these prominent voices and champions of Black communities. They and other Black men and women leaders of the talented 10th spoke about the new Negro and rejected racial stereotypes of the past, expressing pride in their ethnic heritage, and they demanded an end of discriminatory practice in the United States. And they called for their birthright as American citizens, their civil liberties. So, with all of this in mind, there came the Great Migration. This is the part that we all learn in school, right? The Great Migration. This is where all of the Black people in the South went to the North and everything was great, right? Not quite. So, before the Great Migration began, Blacks resided in the South, full of racist discrimination. They lacked any sort of economic opportunity. Most Blacks and some poor whites worked as indentured sharecroppers. They worked as sharecroppers. And basically, what sharecroppers did, they had to give 50% of everything that they sowed to whoever was owning it, right? So at the end of it, with all the taxes on tools and seeds and everything else you need to be an agricultural success, they were still left with nothing at the end of the day. They saw and they read from magazines and publications that trickled their way down south that the North was full of successful Black intellectuals and opportunities provided by the start of World War I. So, due to the war, there's this big decline in immigration from Europe, and an economic industrial boom happened, creating opportunities for Blacks. There is no one to work in the factories. So what do? We run to the factories so that we can make money. So, though this migration was detected as early as 1890, it wasn't until 1915 that things really took off, leading to population booms in this northern city, in these northern places. One of the most jarring or arousing ones is New York, the population of New York City. It started at 92,000 people, And by 1915, it had grown to 328,000 people. That's how big this migration was. And that's just New York City. And that ended up making New York City one of the most important epicenters for Black creativity, Black success, Black intellectualism, Black art. And it led to the creation of Harlem as we know it today. So it was called the Mecca of the New Negro. And the name Harlem itself was actually passed down from the Dutch to the Irish to the Jewish and then finally to the Negro. They took this place in the middle of Manhattan, basically away from these middle class white owners, and turned it into the biggest and most elegant community in the Western world. In the book, The Making of Harlem, James Weldon Johnson clarifies that it wasn't just a colony of blacks, but a city within a city that was the greatest Negro city in the world. And that inspiration went far and wide. It was really important to the time. The power of economic aggressiveness did all of this beauty. The power of, everything we want. We need money. We need to be successful. Just that idea turned this place into a rich, rich cultural boom of hope. So Harlem had a very special character of Negro protest and thought. James Weldon Johnson was a part of this older generation in Harlem, and he stood as an early example to the new Negro. W.B. Du Bois was a Yankee Negro from Harvard and Europe, and they both pushed Black intellectualism directly and challenged the thoughts and ideology of Booker T. Washington, who we all also know. Booker T. Washington insisted on industrial and agricultural training for the Black American and had, according to Du Bois, a seeming dependency on white goodwill and philanthropy. People didn't like that, especially Du Bois, when he realized that Washington was seeing through a very small town, rural point of view. Whereas Du Bois, coming from the North, saw things on a bigger scale, having gone to Europe and back. And he knew that what we needed is not complacency and not okayness, but pride and a way for us to look like noble citizens, people deserving of respect. So there, this rift is created. And from this rift came the National Association of the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP. Du Bois became the editor of its monthly publication, The Crisis. And in The Crisis, there is everything Black, from Black politics, Black leadership, Black arts, Black news, Black exposés on people, Black art. And this crisis would go out everywhere, celebrating Black culture. Du Bois also was very fond of shutting down people he thought were ignorant, and he did not hold back his pen. So now we've got the NAACP, and we've got people identifying with this ideology of no, we don't need to be complacent. We need to be better. We need to have pride in who we are as a people, and we need to show that. And they became a little militant, but fortunately, Du Bois was able to hold them back along with some other help. So now New York City is filled with the spirit of Negro protest and self-assertion. This drive for community and identity and advancement culturally and intellectually fueled artists, scholars, and leaders to hold the banner high for Black rights, Black truths, Black identity, and Black pride. So all of this gives rise to the Harlem Renaissance, correct? There are some very notable figures of Black excellence within the Harlem Renaissance, and we're just going to go through a few. One of the most notable, and a name that we know in the theater world as well as in other places as well, is Alan Locke. He was a Harvard graduate, and he was the first African American to receive a Rhodes Scholarship. When he got back from Oxford, he toured the South, and he was met with horror at the condition of Southern Blacks. And immediately he was like, "We have to do something about it." He got interested in African American studies, African American history, African American art, and he was hired at Howard University and then fired when he was fired with other professors, allegedly due to the fact that he sought to shape curriculum towards African American studies. And at that time, Howard University did not have a Black president, so things were a little tough. He was reinstated in 1928 when they welcomed their first Black president, but this time away, the 3 years in between his dismissal and his reinstatement, this is what's important. That time gave him all the time in the world to be a key part in growing the Harlem Renaissance. He took great interest in the writers, especially Countee Cullen, the poet, Zora Neale Hurston, and Langston Hughes, and he became their advocate. He advanced their cause by acquainting them with white publishers and editors who took interest in their work, thus spreading them on a now global scale, or at least a national scale, almost overnight. Because of him, this this continuum, this explosion of Black creation really became more broad and widespread instead of just here in the middle of Manhattan, in the middle of New York City, and in publications that just go all over the country. W.B. Du Bois really looked up to Locke. He thought that Locke really did some great stuff, and he became another initial promoter of the Renaissance. He insisted on the portrayals of African Americans being noble and dignified in an effort to combat white bigotry and ignorance. Now, did everyone agree with him? Absolutely not. There were some who desired a militant approach, as no, we don't need to just show that we're better. We need to get rid of them altogether. And then there were some who were just like, "Hey, no, we're just going to go back to Africa and peace out, and y'all can handle this on your own." But because of Du Bois's insistence, the Harlem Renaissance was able to flourish. So now some more artistic highlights. 1, the women. I think a name that everybody is familiar with is Josephine Baker. She was a vaudeville dancer as a child. She performed in the chorus of the stage hit Shuffle Along. Really wonderful musical. If you haven't heard of it, you should just go look at it because it is still so beautiful and relevant, and a great depiction of African Americans as they are, instead of the caricatures that they had been made. She became a Broadway hit, known for her dancing, and she was especially loved for her energetic performances of the Charleston. Here's her Black excellence. In World War II, she was awarded the French Legion of Honor, which is their highest award, for her work as a French spy. That's pretty cool. I'd like that. Then, again, Zora Neale Hurston. A popular playwright. She was a folklorist, an anthropologist, and the author of our favorite book, Their Eyes Were Watching God. She found great encouragement with Locke. She moved to New York City to write, and by the 1920s, she was deemed the queen of the Harlem Renaissance. Unfortunately, there was a big scandal where she was accused by her dear friend Langston Hughes of molesting a child. And even though it was false, it just ruined her career. And she died penniless back home in Florida. Ethel Waters was born in a red light district in Pennsylvania, so she grew up living tough. She moved to New York City as soon as she could, and she became known as Sweet Mama Stringbean. She sang all these seductive songs in Broadway and in Harlem nightclubs, but then she became an actress, and she was nominated for an Academy Award in 1950. In the realm of literature, we have Countee Cullen, who was a poet and a Harvard grad. He won several awards and a Guggenheim Fellowship for his writing. Due to his early success, he became known as the Black Yeats. If those of you who are not familiar with the last name, William Butler Yeats, the wonderful Irish writer. And he found that as both a blessing and a curse. A blessing in, hey, I'm doing great, but a curse in, my writing is so similar to that of the European male that will I ever be able to move past it? The answer was maybe. Then another very, very notable name, arguably one of the most known artists of the era, Langston Hughes. Prolific writer, skilled poet, and he paved the way for a more realistic and sympathetic view of Black America. He also became one of the forefront writers of the Federal Theater Project, which was an era of time where Black artists, Black theater makers really got their chance to show the world what they can do, show themselves what they can do, leading to theater as we know it today. In the realm of visual arts, there's Aaron Douglas, known for his Egyptian themes and geometric shapes, and he was known for his many illustrations of African American publications of the era. So chances are, if you are looking at publications from the era, he drew it. In film, we have Oscar Micheaux, who was known as the father of Black cinema. There were no others at this time, and no one was making movies for African Americans. He started off as a writer, and then he went on to film the novels that he wrote. Though he wasn't like really great or successful, and all the films were low budget, he was writing and showing those Black stories. And he presented the great Black actor Paul Robeson in his first on-screen performance. Paul Robeson also grew to become more or less a household name in the world of Black America and Broadway. There were two incredible photographers of this time as well, James Van Der Zee and Carl Van Vechten. They're major contributors in capturing the beauty of the Harlem Renaissance, both during and after. Both of them really took off after the Renaissance, but again, chances are, if you see some really beautiful photography from the time, they took it. Here's where things get really good and familiar. Music. So this is the time where we get the blues, we get jazz, we get really beautiful, unexpected classical music, right? Blues. Bessie Smith, called the Empress of the Blues. She signed to Columbia Records. She had many, many hits. She was incredibly popular, but never received royalties for her work. In the area of jazz, we have Louis Satchmo Armstrong, as I know him from New Orleans, and he modern jazz and developed the scat singing. Duke Ellington, on the same string, was the most famous band leader of the day, and his orchestra played at the popular Cotton Club nightly. His music was broadcast live across the country, and still to this day, both of them have made such major contributions in jazz that they still inspire music today. All types of music, not just jazz, but we get into rock, we get into hip hop and R&B. They helped define those genres. Classical music. Marian Anderson was this great classical singer. She failed the first time at being a classical singer, but the second time she got it good. She was going to perform at Constitution Hall in DC, but she was prevented from doing so by the Daughters of the American Revolution. First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt found out about this. She was really upset and arranged for her to sing on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial instead. Talk about a clapback. Dance. I think one of my favorite dancers is actually Clayton Pegleg Bates. So Pegleg lost his leg in a cotton gin accident when he was 5. His uncle made him a peg leg, and he actually learned to dance by imitating his uncle. He moved to New York, just like every other young artist going to New York to try to make it big. And he did. Instantly. He became a sensation, not only because he had a peg leg, but because he could really dance on the peg leg. And this is also another time where theater flourished. We have Charles Gilpin, an actor who made history, and the title role of Eugene O'Neill's The Emperor Jones. Eugene O'Neill, not a Black individual, so this is big. We also end up with wonderful plays and wonderful works and wonderful arts. There is a specifically wonderful bit, and this will inform you of why Langston and Zora didn't get along anymore in the 1920s. The two of them worked together on a play called Mulebone. Working together on that play broke them. By the almost end of it, they hated each other so much that they never worked together again. Thus, all the scandals afterward. Everyone believes Langston because he is male. No respect. And finally, sports. This was a magical experience for sports as well. That was still a part of Black excellence. This is the time when we got our favorite Harlem Globetrotters. Yes, still around today, amazing tradition. And they heightened the athleticism and the excellence in Black sportsmanship and basketball. So we said all this, but what does it really mean? Why are we really talking about all this Black excellence? And what does it have to do with 2021? Well, I remember vividly in 2019 being so excited to go into the 20s. Flapper dresses, lots of parties, Great Gatsby Part 2. It was going to be lit. But then 2020 happened and the world came apart. We were hit with a pandemic and a lockdown. And then they started shooting and killing Black people more, which led to a resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement. We got tension, we got protests, and everything is grinding so hard together that what do we have? A blossoming of Black art. People doing the things they're creating to let loose the spirit of protest, to let loose the spirit of, I am not down and out yet. So there's this burst of creativity in our world. We have really amazing women that we look up to. We have, of course, Michelle Obama, not necessarily an artist, is an author, and commands respect wherever she goes. We have Kamala Harris, our first Black female vice president, encouraging inspiration and power within ourselves everywhere she goes. And then I think at this time, my favorite is young Amanda Gorman, the youngest youth poet laureate who read a poem that was so incredibly beautiful this past January at President Joe Biden's inauguration. Looking towards these women, we can see trends start to form and inspiration happening. In literature, we have Glory Edom, who is the author and founder of The Well-Read Black Girl, which is a book club for Black women. So we have Oprah's book club, and we also have Glory's book club, and fighting the ideology, and the poor mental decisions that white people make about Black women not being intelligent or not being able to really focus on things. She is dedicated to making sure that not only are we reading, but we're reading good stuff that's for our souls, and we're becoming smarter each and every day. We also fall into some of our great modern modern inspiration, modern art with film and television. We have Daniel Kaluuya, who was in Black Panther, and Judas and the Black Messiah that's coming out this year. He came on the scene and immediately drew Hollywood's eye. An article that I read said that he was well on his way, on the teetering edge of becoming one of the best known Black actors in Hollywood of this era, of this generation. And then there's Tessa Thompson, my love, who was in the Thor movies, and she made waves being one of the first LGBTQ Marvel characters, really pumping up and speaking out for all those who are continuously marginalized. In the era of music, things got wild. All of these new genres has formed, and most of them have been really dominated by our less melanated friends. But groups like Meet Me at the Altar, who is a multicultural alternative punk band whose front singer is a Black girl who sounds like Paramore, breaking the mold. We have Chloe and Halle Bailey, who sing R&B, and now they're transferring into the acting world as well. We're gonna get our first Black Ariel, and it's gonna be great. Then there's Lizzo, bringing the flute and body positivity mainstream. This group called Black Violin, it's a hip hop duo. They both play violin. They're breaking stereotypes. They actually have a song called Stereotypes. And every time you listen to them, it is a wonder. Their music videos are so positive and so uplifting, even though it's just violin music, but it's encouraging to future audiences and to future generations of artists and people. Leslie Odom Jr., jazz. Some of us may know Leslie Odom Jr. as playing Aaron Burr in the hit musical Hamilton. He went on from that to become one of the top names in jazz right now, and is still doing his thing, inspiring other people. And then there's Blanco Brown, who stepped into the country music scene with the greatest song of all time called The Get Up. Watching the music video for this just kind of solidified, one, how great the music video is, and two, the power of a Black man to produce happiness and joy, to inspire creativity, and to be a good person that everybody can see. In the realm of literature, We have, again, Gloria Edom. We also have Marlon James, who is the author of Black Leopard, Red Wolf. It was his first book. He won many, many prizes for it and became one of the up and coming names in um, the fantasy genre. First time, young. I think he's only like 22 or 24. Theater. This is my thing, obviously, so I'm going to try not to talk forever and ever about it. Um, Big names that we know. Daveed Diggs, Lafayette and Jefferson and Hamilton. Also an excellent musician, the craziest rapper that I know. Uh, has gone into Hollywood and done some stuff in there. James Monroe Eagleheart, who played the genie in Aladdin, who we all know and love. Inspiring so many young black male artists, including an actor that I got the chance to work with in undergrad. This man has become that student's mentor, actual mentor, proving how much he wants to bring on the next generation of Broadway actors. Jelani Aladdin, playing the first black Kristoff on Frozen on Broadway. Aisha Jackson, playing the first black Anna in Frozen on Broadway. Brittany Johnson, playing the first Glinda the Good Witch in Wicked. And then, of course, there is Cynthia Erivo from The Color Purple and the movie Harriet. Need I say any more? And even at this time, after all of that crazy protesting and stuff in 2020, I decided to write a play too. That's how much creativity was bursting in everybody at the seams. We got to get this stuff out. The realm of sports, we have beautiful icons like Russell Wilson, Serena Williams, and the ever beautiful and amazing and talented Simone Biles. We also have Clarissa Shields, who has dominated every level of boxing, has back-to-back Olympic goals, who is the first American to do so, and she has a 3-0 professional record with one knockout under her belt. It's incredible. We're not just breaking barriers, but also stereotypes. And in doing so, we have all these calls to action. In the theater world, during the unrest in summer 2020, a document came out called We See You White American Theater, calling for justice, equity, and oh no, there's the word. The word is gone. We'll keep with justice and equity right now. In the theater world, they don't want just a seat at the table. They want the table to be made with them in mind. And then there's also politics. Voter registration drives led by Stacey Abrams this past fall led to a political flip in Georgia that shocked the globe, really. So how does this bring inspiration to our future? Like I said earlier, the first Renaissance gave way to the Federal Theater Project, which helped Black Americans to see their identity and present themselves in a more sympathetic manner. Perhaps, maybe, with the pandemic in mind and the lockdowns seeming to never end and COVID revamping itself every single day, perhaps maybe we can get funding for the arts in the middle of this crisis so that we can, as artists, inspire people and make them not feel so depressed and sad and hopeless. We've got inspiring young people who are coming up and doing amazing things. We have one of those inspiring young people is the lovely Zendaya, who started off on Disney, ended up with this hit show Euphoria, and became the youngest person to win an Emmy last year. So, the Renaissance was born of protest and unrest. It inspired greatness in everyone, not just the ones who took part of it, and it inspired pride in the Black community. What we see today is another rise in pride, in inspiration, and in the feeling that there are no limits. We are who we are, and we should celebrate that. So, where do we go from here? I don't know. But wherever we go from this point, I hope we keep going. And I hope it's great. Thanks. Are there any questions? And feel free to turn your cameras on. I would love to see your faces. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's so good to see some of you here. It's good to see some distance grads from the theater department. It is excellent to see some of my students here. It's wonderful to see a sorority sister, and it is also wonderful to see my absolute best friend who is joining in from Florida right now. So thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If you have any questions about the remainder of the series, about the upcoming events for Black History Month, please feel free to reach out. If you have any questions about this lecture, or if you just want to continue chatting about the Harlem Renaissance, because I will do that all day long, you can reach me at katurner@uidaho.edu. Yeah, cool.
I have a question, Katie.
Yes, Sarah.
So I love this lecture, first of all, and I just want to ask where you see yourself fitting in all of this.
That's a great question. So, Sarah's my major professor. So my goal this year, as she knows, and some of you know, my entire goal is to apply for a PhD program and get in and do great things. I think I see myself as one of the spurs, as one of the scholars, as one of the ones who inspire young people to move to greatness. While yes, I am a theater professional, and yes, I am a director, and yes, I am inspiring the University of Idaho to do more productions by Black playwrights, including the one that's coming up in March, the first weekend of March, called Everybody, directed by yours truly. Hit me up. I want to be that person. I want to be the person that nudges people along to know that, hey, you're great too. You could be the next Zora, or the next Langston, or the next Josephine, or the next Alan, or the next whoever. You can do it. That's where I see myself fitting into this new renaissance.
Hi, Katie.
Hi, Nicholas.
I'm awesome presentation and lecture. So happy and so proud of you. My question would be because there has been for the past few years, we know there has been a struggle with having a strong presence of the arts and in the elementary and grade level schools. So what would you think would be a good way to kind of get our younger generations more involved in the arts and creating their own renaissance? We know there's a lot of things that are happening on social media and television, but how can we get that on a local level or in those grassroots communities?
Yeah. The obvious answer to that is funding, right? That is the obvious answer. Arts fundings in schools. Is that going to happen anytime soon? It doesn't look like it. It doesn't look like it. So what we as Black creators, as Black entrepreneurs, as Black content creators, we can decide to put the burden on our back and decide to go out into our own communities not just to other communities, not just to outside communities, not outside places, but our communities, and look to our next generation and work with them ourselves. There are, when you think about New York City, Brooklyn, Harlem, there's constantly there's this inner city program for this and an inner city program for that. That can happen in smaller towns. That can happen in smaller cities. It's just that the people who have these gifts need to, and this isn't for everyone, need to come out that selfish mindset of trying to make it big and go into trying to make a difference. Because I think that's how they make it big. Great question.
Love it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Well,
I have a question, KT.
yeah. What's up, Julie?
I have a question, but I'm not sure how to word this question.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, how do people with a little more, not power, but I guess a little more
Influence?
Yeah. How do we support the Black community in the arts, in creating, and all that kind of stuff?
So there are a bunch of answers to this, right? First answer is to seek knowledge. Seek knowledge of these communities, seek knowledge of these artists, seek knowledge of these endeavors for yourself. That's one of the first things you can do. Second thing you can do is you can actually support Black artists and Black creators by buying Black. Buy from Black owned stores, buy from Black owned companies, buy from your friend down the road who has a Black owned Etsy shop. Buy from those people, support and uplift those people. And then really taking to heart what advocacy means and standing up for injustice. Standing up when you see that, yes, this isn't a thing that should be happening and this needs to change. Speaking up, speaking out. And it doesn't take a lot. It doesn't take a lot. Sometimes it takes repeating, but not a lot. Good question, Jilly.
Thanks, KT.
Any more questions? There it is. We got the 7. All right. So, Jesse, Corinne, would you like to say anything? Or Linda, Jessica, would you like to say anything? Shout out to the advisors of Black Student Union for being here. And thank you so much to Jesse Martinez and Corinne Bond for helping to put all of this together. So thank you. And thank you all for coming and listening to one of my first lectures ever. So have
Thank
a
you,
wonderful
KT.
afternoon.
This is great. Thank you.
Thank you. See y'all next
Yeah, you
week.
did a great job, KT.
Thank you. We did it.
Nice. Oh, that was awesome. Oh, I'm gonna stop recording.